How our overture of our AJR album sounds. How our music critic thinks that sounds.
There are a lot of hated musicians like Imagine Dragons, Benson Boone, but there is a band that is more hated than any other, and that band is AJR. I am a huge fan of AJR, and I've seen them perform twice, and I have 4 of their vinyls. I have a crippling addiction to AJR. I love AJR because I find a lot of their songs relatable and they've helped me through some tough times. Also, the weird samples that they use are so cool. I love how they view certain topics like divorce and love. I've also never heard another band sound this unique. The topics they sing about are so unique, and I found myself relating to the more unique songs like The Trick and Dear Winter and The DJ's Crying for Help and a dog song, surprisingly. But they are extremely hated, and I can kind of understand why, but also I don't. So today I'll be deep diving into their career and discography and seeing why they're so hated. But first, why are they hated? There are a few reasons that AJR is hated. People say that their music is overproduced and terrible, and the weird sounds they incorporate are just not good. Like, can you mention a band that incorporates a SpongeBob sample into their music? The lyrics are apparently corny, and the lyrics are shallow, and the music is just plain annoying. Another reason I see is that they write about the same things, like growing up, which isn't entirely true. They are also hated because of the way that they view real-world problems, and they do it in a very childish way.
Why AJR is so widely despised by such a big vocal group of people has always been a really interesting question to me. On the one hand, obviously people are allowed to like what they like and dislike what they dislike, and I don't have a problem with that, but the reaction to AJR specifically feels so visceral, so vocal, so loud, almost akin to how people react to like Imagine Dragons. It doesn't personally make sense to me. Again, like what you like, dislike what you dislike. But also, why it's so vocal has always confused me. That being said, I can at least contextualize where people are coming from, and I've kind of summed it up in 3-ish main reasons. Firstly, AJR has got a lot going on, and in my opinion, I don't think they always know when to stop. When I listen to AJR, there's a few tracks here and there that make me think of that Jurassic Park quote along the lines of, "You were so focused on whether or not you could that you didn't stop to think if you should." And while that isn't always the issue, like I said, it's a very scarce song-to-song basis, I do think that's a common factor in why people are turned off from AJR. I think this is especially problematic in like OK Orchestra and Living Room, the former of which was massively popular. AJR is just inherently very creative and theatrical with their sound, and for a lot of people, I think that's pretty off-putting. I think the more overwhelming argument, though, is how overplayed some of these AJR songs get, especially in this day and age of social media. I mean, even just throwing it back a few years ago, there was a time period where you couldn't go a single day without hearing Bang, or Burn the House Down, or 100 Bad Days on the radio, and I can definitely see why that would get annoying. I think a part of where a lot of people's distaste for AJR comes from is not just the saturation of how often they're hearing this artist, but the saturation of how often they're hearing the same few songs from the artist. I mean, I think I even feel a bit of that to an extent. Songs like I Won't and World's Smallest Violin got blown away to hell and back on social media, and for me, that kind of ruined my perception and enjoyment of those songs. So I guess that's just my personal experience with it. This argument immediately reminds me of another one of my favorite artists, 21 Pilots. If you were anything like me in the mid-2010s, you should easily remember just how common Stressed Out, Ride, and Heathens, among other songs, were on the radio, to the point where I think those songs have kind of damaged 21 Pilots' reputation. And when they think 21 Pilots, they think of these 3 overplayed songs and not the other, 7, 8 albums. The more you hear something, especially in a capacity of how often you'd hear something like Bang or Stressed Out, the more likely you are to fall out of love with it. And I think that's where these two bands kind of intersect and cross paths. I think this last point is less of a reason why people hate them, but it still felt valuable to bring up. I think there's just a lot of people that won't even give AJR a try, won't even give them the time of day. The internet is vicious and crazy, and I think people would benefit from not taking other people's thoughts as their own and actually thinking for themselves. Now that does sound dramatic, but I think there's something of an echo chamber going on, at least with AJR, in the sense that everyone just repeats how bad they are, and I'm not convinced that everyone who's talking about that has even given them a fair shot. Like, again, I've said this before, I'll say it again. Like what you like, listen to what you want to listen to. But I think if people dug a little deeper and tried out a simpler song like Betty or Dear Winter or Christmas in June, they could find something to appreciate. At the end of the day, to each their own, listen to what you want to listen to. I just think it's a little hypocritical to throw so much shade at AJR without ever diving in and listening to more of their stuff. I don't think that's fair. Back to you.
But is this true? Let's find out. AJR is composed of brothers Adam, Jack, and Ryan. The first initials of their name make up the name of the band. They were born and raised in New York. AJR spent their early years busking, tap dancing, and singing covers of songs around New York City. They would busk and tap dance under the name Tapping Brothers to the Third Power. They would take the money from busking and they would buy new recording equipment, like bringing in drum sets into their living room. And they would produce everything in that said living room. This is sort of off topic, but also on topic. And this is pointing to one person, Mike the Snare. The line about YouTube is about watching videos instead of going to college, not doing YouTube as a job. Hey, Mike the Snare, I love your videos. I'd really like it if you would do a deep discog dive on Leve or Imagine Dragons or Panic at the Disco. I'd like it if you would. Yeah. But that would be it for the band for about almost a year. But towards the middle of 2025, Jack would post this video saying that they will be releasing new music in the new year, while also teasing a new song called Betty. But also in the year, Ryan would tease a new song called I'm Sorry You Ain't Crazy. Later, they would announce a 5-song EP called What No One's Thinking. It was kind of a successor to their first EP, What Everyone's Thinking. They would also tease a new song called The Big Goodbye, and it was kind of starting going viral on TikTok.